Hello, dear friends, my lovely audiences, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the East-West Show. Jack Chow on the East-West Show with G&E TV. Every now and then, when we see a moment that's possible, we bring information that we believe in the long run will be needed by the audiences, will be useful to everybody to build up our ideology, to build up the society. Conceptually, we'll be stronger in that way. With me today is my good friend, in other words, my mentor, Dr. Wei Yan, a author for a great book. I showed you that book. That book, my son took it. I'm very sorry. He likes it. He's still reading. From the Great Wall to the Wall Street, and he is author of. So, Dr. Young, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you very much. And for several times, I get calls and emails from friends who happen to be also audiences to the show, talking about our last few times, twice, discussion about your book. In other words, that represents your concept, and it's an enrichment of a lifetime experience almost. From Wall Street, namely Lehman Brothers, to Hong Kong, and all the way to China, when there was the triangle debt situation, and in the financial world. However, Dr. Yang overrode all these situations or different situations in a one belief, one method, that he always take a cross-cultural look. Right? So with that as an introduction, which is too long as a lead line, we give a warm welcome to Dr. Yang. Right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Yang, my big problem is that on a day-to-day basis, I deal with lots of issues, right? And each of the issues involves people from different cultural background. Right. So, and I found out that your cultural, cross-cultural look, the word look is so important. So how do you address that as the importance, the way I feel about it, please?
Well, that's a very good question, Jack. I think most of us live in today in a very multicultural world. And however, some of us believe that everybody should behave the same way, but that's not true. Everybody behaves the way they're brought up. They're brought up maybe through generations and generation of the same kind of breeding. Then they behave a certain manner, and there are differences between people that are brought up in different cultures, in Asian culture, Arab culture, and Western and U.S. culture. So we can't really use just our own cultural perspective to look at other people. I think what we should do is step aside and put ourselves into other people's shoes and try to understand their perspective, how they look at a problem may be different than ours. When we see that, then you understand, wait a minute, there may be a different way to solve a problem, because number one, there may be miscommunication. Number two, there may be misunderstanding each other's motives. And number three is that maybe the problem is different. You look at this point, I look at this point, we're not meeting it. So actually the more important point is actually in the middle. So that's somehow should be done more often in today's world. Yeah.
Yes. This is all, of course, on one perspective, that people should always look at the issue way beyond to see the culture behind.
Yes.
So that will give you an interpretation to what you see in the front.
Yes.
Something like that, right?
Absolutely.
However, that said, we all come from different culture, we all behave differently. We have a big world which is flat now. And on the platform, which is a world called flat, we have one rule. We have international rule though. We have only one rule, right? So that seems to be a contradiction. On one hand, everybody behaves differently. On the other, on the platform, there is one rule only. So how do we apply the cross-cultural look into that kind of situation, please?
Well, that's a very deep question. The one rule that we have, that the rule changes over time. And, you know, after the Second World War, the U.S. is the predominant world power. And a lot of the world rules and, you know, the UN, the World Trade Organization, World Bank, this is all set up using U.S.-based rules. So when we say there's one rule, you're talking about basically U.S. rules. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how long will this last? Will this be the rules forever? No one knows. Because in the human history, there are often many kinds of rules. When different countries are prominent, then they promulgate their own rules. And when that fails, something else take over. So it's a cycle thing. It's not a cycle, but like it's a progressive thing. So over time, the new orders of the world becomes more surfaced, and new rules get developed. Now, when you mentioned the world is flat, that's just a very insightful comment, because the world is not just flat; it's actually limited. You know, and we all live in this world. We're not going to outer space to live in Mars or any other places. So the problem is we have to learn how to live together. Now, one of the reasons I got interested in this cross-cultural thing is that the Chinese civilization, the people are brought up with, was based on limited space. You see, the Chinese culture is developed within the middle of China, where people don't move all that much, were farmers. When they're farmers, they have limited space, they have limited land, they have to live and work together with their families, with their relatives, whatever, whoever works in the land. So the Chinese way of doing things is based on a limited world that we are somehow all related in this world. The Western way of doing things is based on unlimited world, an infinite world, because we are humans and we look at the world separately. We analyze it and we try to make rules based on our observation of nature and how people work. That runs into a problem, because today's world is a lot smaller.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's exactly the point. And also, in addition to that point, though, on the book that you wrote, by the way, my audience, that's a great book. I love it. I love it. I read it. I had it for only two days before my son grabs over, and he's still the owner of it. He claimed the owner of it, right? And well, anyway, you autographed it and he sent to me, right?
Yes, it's for you. Yes.
Yeah, he can't claim ownership anyway. So that is a great book called "From the Great Wall to Wall Street." The subtitle: "A cross-cultural look at the nowadays world."
Yeah,
I like that. Okay, speaking of that, though, I really have another concern in the same area. Now you're talking about not typically issues between China and the United States. Take NATO, for example, right? You're talking about overall countries, right, all together in one pot, right? If you still want to take a cross-cultural look, you might call it from Eiffel Tower to Statue of Liberty.
Yes.
So that kind of thing. And between them, there are gaps too.
Yes.
And that gap has to be also looked upon as with a cross-cultural look. And how do you see that at that kind of level, please?
Well, this is very interesting because NATO arose, I think, in the 50s to counter, at that point, the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was much larger than today's Russia.
Yeah.
It broke off in 1990, so now there are member states and Russia alone. So the NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was developed to counter the perceived aggressiveness of the communist Soviet Union. Now take a fast forward today. Soviet Union is no longer around. Russia is no longer communist. In fact, I don't think Communist Party is legal in Russia anymore. I'm not sure, but I doubt it. So to maintain a NATO so that you can confine Russia, one of the components of Soviet Union, sounds a little bit extended for that purpose. So I don't know Russia, of course, is still causing trouble in this border But if you take a cross-cultural look, you understand how Russians might think. Russia think that the West is trying to give them a hard time, because when the Soviet Union fell apart, Russia's economy fell about 50%. Okay, and then after the Crimea crisis, where Russia took over Crimea, which until 1954 was part of Russian territory, so. And then the Westerners applied sanctions, so Russia's economy fell down again. So from their point of view, we are being oppressed by the West. So if you understand that, so maybe look, there are ways to work this out rather than just confrontation. I don't think that trying to beat each other up with more advanced weapons.
So
where to go?
Am I reading you right if I say that? Because time has changed.
Yes.
The necessity of those days when NATO was possible, was necessary, might not be still that strong.
Well, I think that's probably true. The threat is no evident, and the reason for being for NATO should be re-examined because things have changed. And we have always made Russia a big enemy. But look at it critically. Russia's economy is less than 1/10 of the U.S. It has 1/3 of the population. And besides the military, it doesn't have much
Yes,
to show.
You're right. Yeah.
So, look, we always need to find an enemy in our culture, so that becomes an enemy.
Yeah, look into history though.
Yeah.
There was time when Russia was 4 times strong.
Yes.
Right. And anyway, when the Union, Soviet Union, with the whole Union was a union though, when that was really a threat that posed to the world as well as to European countries, right? Okay, my dear friends, with my mentor, Dr. Wei Yang, we're touching base some conceptual issues. Normally, we're talking about a bottle of foam. But, above there might be something, that we never got a chance to touch about. So it's a cross-cultural look at everything. How about that? We call that a cross-cultural look at everything. This was given, this was ignited by a great book that Dr. Yang was an author of, From the Great Wall to Wall Street. You check with Amazon, there's a blue cover. You will find it a wonderful good book. We'll be right back to continue to talk about it. All right, stay with us. Hello, dear friends, lovely audiences, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. I love talking about politics, but while to politics, I still love conceptual subjects better than politics myself. With me today is my mentor, Dr. Wei Yang, author of a great book, From the Great Wall to the Wall Street, which is a book this thick, has lots and lots of precious ideas about how we want to look at things around us. So the subtitle of that book is A Cross-Cultural Look at the Nowadays World. Speaking of the nowadays world, we see lots of things that you want to scratch your head about to find a result, right? Find a solution. Yet we can't. Nobody can at this very moment. And bigger issues, smaller issues, all issues, or even mixed issues, or issues related to each other, or tied to each other, and sanction, re-sanction, 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 organization, de-organization, going in and out, so all kinds of. We were at a point talking about NATO. We're talking about a time when there was in history one time when Russia, the Soviet Union was so strong that posed threats to the rest of the world. including the United States. Of course, that includes the small countries in Europe. NATO was given birth to. Now that in NATO, Trump calls, say, hey, you guys not paying your dues, right? There are 29 members, each of them supposed to pay 2% of their GDP as their fees, monthly fees or whatsoever fees, to annual fees to the organization. Well, whereas we end up, as a matter of fact, paying 70% of it. To you, how could it happen that way, such an unfair way? We did not even know about it.
Yeah.
Please?
Well, I think that at the beginning, we were a strong ally of NATO because of the Soviet threat. So that's very rational. As the world changed, and Soviet Union is not the same as Russia today, although there's some similarities, but it's not really run in a communist manner. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't have a slogan of revolution or subverting the rest of the world and all that. So it's more and more a nationalist government than, say, a socialist government. So the need for NATO to be so vigilant about Russia, I think is a little bit overplay.
All right.
And then perhaps because Russia has submarines here and there, they drove to Sweden. They testing, keep on testing the alliance, and that's just skirmish that happens all the time.
I see.
U.S. also have such activities everywhere else. Mm-hmm. So I think perhaps your question, should NATO shoulder its own burden? I say absolutely. It's their own borders, it's their own government. Mm-hmm. If they want to protect it, they should.
Their own national defense.
Absolutely. Well, why should they rely on America? Mm-hmm. Maybe, after the war, when they were still rebuilding, they need America. But today, they don't need America. And they should be shouldering its own defenses. And then they'll find a way to make peace with Russia if they want.
Sure. In other words, now President Trump calls two ways. Either way is either you guys pay your fees, right? We keep on playing the same game.
Yeah.
Or I'll back up.
No, I think
you think he's making the right call?
I think he is. He looked at this arrangement. It can't go on forever. We have a budget deficit all the time, and a lot of it, the expenses go and support our military everywhere. We have almost 1,000 bases everywhere in this world. That's quite expensive, and if we are supposed to uphold the national defense of our allies, then they have to do something back to us. I'm not sure that that kind of a relation has to be fulfilled. It's more like one way. So we've been doing that most of our responsibility, but I'm not sure we've been paid back on this.
Okay. And that said, though, there is always an area to apply the higher level perspective. From the international level, they'll look down at the problems that they are arguing about them. Will U.S. backup cause confusion to the smaller countries in Europe? So from an international COP perspective, right? So, I mean, do you think it is worth, or do you think it is necessary from a cross-cultural look that U.S. stay in the game and do as much as we can, if not 70, 65, or 60, and still let them say, hey, keep on calling them, pay the fees, let the game be played for another decade or something?
Well, I think with anything like that,
this is my worry. This is my concern.
Yeah, with any support like that, the recipients of these supports have grown accustomed to it for a period of time. So rapid withdrawals always cause a lot of trauma. We have experienced that in various other countries where we were involved, and rapid withdrawals always cause a vacuum, and that causes a problem sometimes. So I don't think it's the right strategy used. I more favor, I don't know anything about the subject, but I'm just saying out the top of my head, I favor more of a gradual withdrawal. At the same time, the member countries will strengthen their own defenses, and their discussion with Russia directly, if possible, and just to make sure that the transition will be smooth and we will be not shouldering everybody's problems. Yeah.
Well, sounds reasonable. Sounds reasonable. However, if I may think about 100 years later or 200 years later, right, when there is no distinction or not clear distinction between nations, right? I'm talking about people getting interracially. It's okay. We're all only human. All right. Yeah. This is IT time, digital time, right? Right. People getting internationally, interracially married anyway, right? Kids as byproduct of the interracial marriage now, well, given birth to, and their kids and their kids, generation after generation, and politically with all the treaties and all the agreement, all the organizations whatsoever going on at the same time, do you think one day, one time, many years later, the world will really becoming flat?
Well, I think that would be an ideal situation because the world is getting smaller. Our population all over the world, is increasing. We now have 7.3 billion people after the Second World, almost double what after the Second World War. So the population has increased quite a lot over that time period, and it will continue to increase. So the problem that faces us 100 years from now will not be like border issues and clashes of cultures, but more like, look, how can we work together to produce more food? How can we work together to keep our environment safe? How can we work together to ameliorate the problems of global warming? How can we find out diseases and stuff like that? It would be more like common problems rather than individual country problems.
Yeah. And that is a very, I would say, not exactly utopia. It's better, even better than utopia back then. We're talking about the possibility. The possibility is there.
Yes.
Right? You're looking at a clear water. You put a drop of ink in there, you can see. And after you stir it or wait long enough, though, and there is no way you can tell the ink from water, thing like that, right? Now, I have my interest in the pot, it's just like ink to water, and you have your interest in the pot, also like ink to water, though. Over time, there will be no interest of ink in the water. It's everybody's water, it's everybody's interest.
Yes.
With that, if you want to give a definition, give this concept a definition, though, do you call it, or would you call it, or could you call it socialism, or whatever ism?
Well, I wouldn't call it socialism. I would call it tolerance, because often culture, especially Western culture, is built on a binary system that every activity is seen as a contest. So you always fighting somebody to win. Now that concept gets more and more difficult to fulfill when the world's smaller, because you cannot just kill off all your enemies, because it doesn't work that way. And first of all, you kill your enemies, it doesn't work because there are people, and you're not going to kill everybody because their descendants and people like that will get angry at you. They have generations of enemies. So that doesn't work. Whereas the Eastern culture, the one that I think China is credit for, is learn how to live together in a very confined space.
Coexistence.
Coexistence, and that's because Confucianism has a very important point. It's called benevolence.
Benevolence, benevolence.
With that understanding that, look, your pain is my pain, your your problem are my problems as well. So, and then you have the concept of tolerance. That is, look, we accept you. I don't care who you are and where you come from, but you are just as me, because you also have two eyes, you have a nose, you have 4 limbs, and so there are many, many similarities, even though we may have different colors, speak different languages, but we are just human beings, so we need to live here, survive together.
That's very good. That's very profound. I would believe that, do you teach this in schools?
No.
well, we should teach this in school. Our kids should be taught with this concept, because it really in the long run will prevail, right? My dear friend, let's take a very short moment out. With me today is my good friend, my dear friend, my big brother, Dr. Yang, my mentor, sort of. And we're on the cross-cultural look at the world issues, problems, or at the problematic world, right? So it's all triggered about by his book, From the Great Wall to the Wall Street. Wall. It's a wall culture, right? So we really want to come back to focus on the world wall. Right, stay with us, please. Hello, dear friends, my lovely audiences. Welcome back to the show. Jack Zhao having some good time at this East-West show with GNE TV. With me today, my honor to my whole team, we're visited by Dr. Yang, former financial consultant at Lehman Brothers of Wall Street, and then in Hong Kong, the stock exchange market, an active person for quite some time, and another decade, and then in China back then in the early or mid or even late 90s, when China was running this triangle debt problems, he applied his concept to 3 different battlefield called that way, and they all worked. That is the concept written in his great book, From the Great Wall to Wall Street, which I read and I fell in love right away. My son read it, and he became a owner of that book. He took it, grabbed it. By the way, some other day, I either buy from Amazon or I get another one from you. You don't have to give me those the fine pack, a fun pack. Right, the paper pack will do. All right. Anyway, we were at a issue talking about wall. Even in your book, right? On one cover, the word wall was used twice.
Yes.
Wall to wall, right? Great Wall to Wall Street, right? So now, we know the word wall. In the ancient time, it might be good. Right now, will depend what you're talking about. You need a wall to hold your house, right? You don't want to build a wall in between the house, in between people, right? So now, how do we, versus the fact that we are going to have a flat world, right? It's kind of like 90 degrees. Yeah. How do you want to apply your concept? In other words, to make your concept more accepted by people versus the fact that we are in the verge of going flat?
Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting question. I'll see if I can answer short.
Thank you, please.
The walls that we build are to protect a certain people from intrusion of other people. So it's a physical thing. And today, these walls are difficult to sustain because we have many other ways of infiltrating another country or bypassing these walls. And we have a lot of internet, we have digital information, media, all that. We can these walls are immaterial. It's very easily penetratable. But I think that there is a wall subconsciously, there's a war between cultures. This is the war that we put up ourselves because we have a prejudice against certain cultures. I'm not just saying Westerner against the Asians, Asian against Westerners. We always think that they are a certain way, therefore they have to behave a certain way, and therefore we have to behave accordingly. And this is putting up a cultural war. When we put up a cultural war, we limit our ability to understand, appreciate the other side, and what the good points they have and the weak points that we can take as examples. And so we kind of hurting ourselves by putting this kind of war, invisible war. So I think we need to somehow dismantle that wall and have an open mind and look clearly into other people's, not just as how he looks, how he dresses, what kind of language he speaks, but kind of see through it and what's behind his actions, his culture, try to understand the other's culture and where he's coming from. And when we dismantle this cultural war, then we're in better position to understand the other person, as someone that we can work with, as someone that we can solve problems together. So
Exactly.
I think that's the important point.
All right, okay, good. That's a very, very thorough analysis of the word role. And that is to say that along into history, along as time goes, the word war has lost its, or necessarily always stay with the original meaning.
Yes.
For protection. When there is no protection to talk about, any existence of war, though, including those cyber wars, including firewalls, right, including cultural war, will be no good or not helping people themselves.
Yeah.
Am I right?
I think so. I think so. We have to, we are stressed out by what we perceive as threats. Cyber warfare, invasion of privacy, stealing of our information, all that. We try and find all kinds of ways to block this. And I think there, to some extent, I think those are important because we have to prevent criminals from accessing information. But I think that's what we can do on the physical side. On the mental side, I think we need to somehow lower our prejudice of other people, and try to dismantle the cultural war that we erected somehow, maybe subconsciously or intentionally put up this wall when we see other people. So I think that we should do that.
Exactly, exactly. It gives it is. It's a lot of negativities in the concept of the role. To give the simplest example, we have two neighbors, right? And their front yard next to each other, and there's a line there. This is my property, this is your property, right? Okay, now, one day we put up a wall in between. Suppose the wall is 12 inches. It has to take 6 inches your land, and 6 inches of mine. Or otherwise we fight, right? Something like that. Well, those 6 inches are wasted. Wasted for nothing. And just a wall. Matter of fact, the physical wall should of course be respected with a concept. They say, oh, I know that's a wall, that's my neighbor. I don't want to go across. So that, or sometimes if I did, I was a sorry neighbor, I did that by accident, something like that. So I'm talking about even mathematically, the wall doesn't work that perfectly. Am I right?
Well, I think if you have a neighbor and he's very meticulous about his yard, and your dog keeps going there and screwing up his plants and vegetable gardens, and I think that there's a reason to put a wall there, because the animals don't understand these things. If you
can do a fence.
You can do a fence, something like that. But to put a wall there indicates that, look, I don't want to be friends with you.
Something like that.
And I don't even want to see you.
Declaration.
So that's something to me a little bit drastic for this kind of activity.
So that said, though, we apply what we discussed now back to the NATO discussion, though. Is Trump building a wall for the United States? I'm not talking about a southern border wall.
Yes.
I'm talking about European. I'm talking about NATO. I'm talking about, maybe later we'll talk about North Korea.
Yeah.
So are we building another wall or walls, please?
Well, I think he's doing probably the opposite. Yeah, my simple analysis. I think he's look at NATO as a look, does it serve its purpose? But the other question is, should we be in it to the extent that we are? And perhaps those answer to those questions in his mind is probably not. Okay, and so rather than strengthen the NATO wall, he's finding ways to have us to withdraw, and as a result, weaken the wall, and which is, in some extent, good, because the problem is with the Western culture is when you started building up and fight, the other side would also build up and fight. So the fight may be not for anything important, but it's just because someone's there has a bigger gun, then you have to also put up a bigger gun just to counter that. But is this really necessary? I mean, what good does it serve?
Yeah, you mentioned that. That's really something that I forgot. I thought I was going to ask you about, which I always forgot, talking about the guns, right? So you assume you have an enemy. You people pick up a gun, right? And by culture, when you have a gun, I should have a gun for protection. And then we just gun ourselves up.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, neither you nor me thought of having a gun, something like that. In between countries, in between two people, always the same thing. Do you think you agree with me?
Well, I think so. I think our culture, particularly in this country, always talk about one side of the problem. And the media likes to exaggerate one side of the problem, which is the problems that we have, and it doesn't talk about the better part of us. And the most of us don't really have guns and or interest in violence, but they don't talk about the good side of the people. So as a result, that you perceive a lot of threats don't maybe not exist. I know some people who have lots of guns because they are afraid that one day somehow someone's going to come in and.
Of course, when you say guns, we're talking about we just borrow the word gun, or word sign kind of overprotection, something like that. Kind of
overprotection, okay, insecurity.
Okay, my dear friends, today with my mentor, Dr. Yang. Oh, by the way, you're teaching in Pepperdine, right?
Yes, I teach a course.
What do you teach?
In the second year finance course.
Oh, good. Oh, that's your expertise, right? So we'll be right back, and with Dr. Yang, we're getting step by step, to the bottom issue that everything. If you take a look with a cultural look at the issue you want to look at, well, things might be different. So stay with us. We'll be right back, please. Hello, lovely friends, my lovely audiences. Welcome back to the show. With Dr. Yang, time seems to go faster, and I didn't even realize we're on the fourth segment already. So Dr. Yang is sharing his thought, which is the enriched elements of all his lifetime experiences, no matter the Wall Street with Lehman Brothers, or in Hong Kong with the financial world and the arena, or in China with the triangles debt situation, and now teaching at the Pepperdine of a second year of finance or financial whatever.
Graduate school.
And he is kind of putting everything in a very compact way, enrichment, call it that, to imbue us, this society, this community, with the concept that if you look things with a cultural look, right, cross-cultural look, you might find different result. So back to the concept of wall, right? When I was little, my mother used to teach me that when you are poor, you wish to have a rich neighbor. Well, when I look around, when I grew up, I see different things. Everybody wishes to see their neighbors poorer than them, so that they will be proud of. Or among the rich, I want to be richer. I want to be richer than you. So from a cross-cultural look, though, do you think what I was taught by could be introduced to the world to stop those unnecessary competition, call it, please?
Well, I think one of the points that you made is that how do we judge ourselves?
Okay.
Do we compare ourselves with material wealth, bank accounts, assets, or do we compare ourselves with? I think it depends on how you judge yourself. When you judge something, there's a standard. There's a standard, and then you place yourself somewhere in this standard range, and then you place your neighbor in this other range. You know, he may have a bigger house, so he's higher in this than your standard, and then you may be here, and then you have a gap, and then there's this anxiety generated because you think, oh, I'm not as good as him. So, but this is a problematic because if you only use one scale to judge. Now, I happen to think that, God brought us to this world for many reasons, and not just to accumulate wealth, because that doesn't mean anything, or to consume wealth. But I think that he has a better, a higher objective for us, which is to create maybe more peace for the world, create something more useful for the world rather than just some showing it a nice car, a big house, and that sort of thing, because that's not lasting. How long can a person live? 100 years maybe? And what good do these things do to him, or even to his children? Because the Chinese saying that a well spoils your kids, so we have to be aware of that also.
Yeah.
So I think that if you somehow use a different scale, then maybe no scale at all, and then there's no comparison, and then you're not really when you compare, then somehow you compete. When you compete, then it's got to be winner or loser, and that's not very good. Maybe you can have a different scale. So like, how about do we work together? How about do you and your neighbor work together to prevent problems at dog crossing each other's yards, or intruders coming in, you're helping him, he's helping you. How about you do that? That's a different scale. So I think that we, in our world, we somehow lost sight of this cooperative scale. We only have this competition scale, which happened to origin in the Greek culture, and when they had the Olympics, and everything is, this competition in the traditional Western culture was exactly Greeks, and everything in what we do is competition. You compete with yourself, you compete with other students, you compete with business, you compete with everything for ratings, all that stuff. So
yeah, I do agree with you, exactly. Especially when you mention this, I keep thinking about your term cross-cultural, called cross-cultural look. And the same thing, speaking of competition though, we can apply Lao Tzu and Confucianism to this whole discussion just to balance it. I believe that in a country like United States, when sports are so prevailing, we can probably say United States is very sporty. How about that, right?
Yes.
All right. When it compares to other countries such as China, right? Well, where sports are not that much prevailing though. And do you think we would realize one fact that people, especially kids, are taught in a way that competition, and to compete is always a word in their mind. So they grow up in that, to grow up in that environment, and it gives you, well, too much of an unnecessary willpower or something. Am I right? Or
I think that the culture, U.S. culture, is somehow based on competition. And the other side of competition is cooperation. So we see less emphasis on that. When you kids go to high school, you have extracurricular activities, you belong to the tennis team, basketball team, you win the local championship, and that's a feather on your cap. And you use that to apply for school because that indicates that you are someone that can make it in the society, and which is good. But problem is, Jack, is that when you have a competition, you have a winner and loser. And how do you find winner or loser in life? Okay, and that's a problem.
All right.
That's a problem.
Exactly.
If you set this kind of standard on a person's life, and if the guy makes it, and he becomes a winner, and otherwise becomes a loser. I mean, look, in God's mind, are there winners and losers? I don't think so.
Exactly.
That
exactly reminds me of one thing, which I did not know from, by which country's team, because I wasn't thinking about talking to you, right? Otherwise, I would. Was two teams that during the World Cup soccer game, of course, probably there is a outside of the field a whistle that the players mistook it as a whistle from the judge. So he touched the ball with the hand. That's a foul, right? That's a foul. For that foul, the composing team put the ball there and kick it out of bounds. Did not take the opportunity.
Yeah.
Could be a good shot.
Yeah, but they want to play it fair. Yeah.
And then, wow, there goes, the applause goes huge and huge. Yeah. So that's a way of you winning. Do you think so?
I think that there's, that's what you call sportsmanship.
Yeah.
And winning at all costs, sacrificing sportsmanship, I don't think that's a very good thing. And I mean, what I'm trying to say in this whole discussion is that winning is hard to define. If you get satisfaction in your work and you won, okay. If you have a happy family, the Chinese concept, that you already won.
How do the Asian Chinese, the philosophers, look at winning?
Well, if you go back to Taoism and Confucianism, especially Taoism, winning is not like the strong overcoming the weak. In Taoism, the weak can overcome the strong. And in Taoism, water is used as an example of ultimate substance. Why? Because when you hit a bucket of water, the water goes away. And when you withdraw, the water comes back. And it penetrates every corner. And it can freeze it up, and it breaks up rocks and stuff like that. And it flows according to the terrain. In every vessel you put it in, the terrain that flows in. So in Taoism, in traditional Chinese culture, water is the ultimate form of superiority. Yeah, but it's not strong. It's not like a rock or a stick or a steel or something like that. So there's a reason, and I think a lot of it because our ancient sages, Lao Tzu and Confucius, they saw this world as a human being as part of this world that we have to emulate it to survive. Yeah.
To look at the differences of two cultures, though, one word we're talking about the visual strong, and the other we're talking about the inside strong.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes.
The quality kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, very good. And there are lots of things as you go along. You will find this kind of winning judgment between winning or losing. That I believe, if we keep on teaching our kids the judgment, the different judgment though, our things will get better. Do you think so?
Well, I think they need to be exposed to a different way of thinking as well, not just one way. the American football coach Joe Lombardi said winning is not the important, it's the only thing, you know. So to have that attitude in life is good, and you will try to do things better and all that stuff. But at the same time, it goes back to our earlier conversation, because the world is getting smaller, and winning by killing your opponent is not a good way to win. And because we have to look at ways where we can survive together, that we can work together. We can survive together only by working together. Look at, we have this global warming problem. We have a lot of refugees problems. We can't just put walls, and you cannot stop the hot air from coming in and causing here 100 degrees in temperature.
Do you think in one word, do you think in one word, am I right if I call human beings to slow down a little bit? We're too much on a fast track, as you mean.
I think we're too driven. I think they're driven by this material aspect of our lives, that we need to do this, we need to do that, otherwise we'll fail. And while we do that, we don't have fun. We don't have fun. If you have fun doing that, that's fine. But we don't have fun. We're just like doing because other people are doing, you know. And I think that we should re-examine our priorities a little bit here.
Good. That's very good. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate the set of mind, the knowledge, the theory. Right. Okay, my dear friends, we're over time, but we'll try to save it. My dear friend, with me, my mentor, Dr. Wei Yang, a great human being, sharing his thought conceptually and practically to deal with our narrative issues. The conclusion is that you should look at things with a cross-cultural look, and then you see a different result. And Dr. Yan has already promised me, whenever he has a chance, he will do another show coming here to continue sharing his thought over other issues, all right? So, my dear friends, my audiences, thank you for watching, and to Dr. Yan, thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Jack.